Dope! Let's do this today. I'm actually really stoked about today. Hey friends, how's it going? Let's go over camera basics 1. This is going to be part 1 of a multi-part series. I don't know how many, but we're going to just keep on tackling different steps of camera basics. I want to make sure that you guys are proficient whenever you pick up a camera. Because today we are talking about the 3 basic parts of photography: shutter speed, aperture, ISO. Let's do this. Shutter speed, aperture, ISO are the 3 most basic parts of photography and filmmaking. Understanding and being proficient in these 3 is the best to make your photography so much better. Shutter speed dictates a lot of what photography is like. Say you want to capture a runner mid-stride and have everything just perfectly clear, or you're on a car moving really fast and you want to just get something really still. Shutter speed is what's going to dictate that. Shutter speed is basically how long your sensor is exposed to light. When you snap that photo, you're basically opening and closing it for as long as you set it to be. So it can really affect how exposed your photo is. You can either let a lot of light in or just a fraction of a second, depending on what you're going for. And these are big parts of photography and can actually dictate whether you make the shot or not. Look at this photo here. This was shot with a long shutter speed of 30, or 1/30th of a second. Bernie was running around, so you could see that there's some motion blur in his body. Bernie being the amazing, adorable beagle that stole my heart. Now if you look at this photo, you can see that there's no motion blur at all. That's because it was shot at a higher shutter speed of 320, or 1/320th of a second. There's a lot less blur and you can see everything in nice crisp detail. Second is aperture. Aperture is actually the hole that the light goes through the lens. It's very similar to your eye, so the wider the aperture, the more light can come in. The aperture also affects the depth of field. Depth of field is basically the range of what's actually in detail and in focus in the shot, and can definitely make a huge improvement on your photography. If you're taking portraits for a friend and you go to a park with a bunch of people in it, you really want to make sure you have a shallow depth of field, so that way the focus is just on your friend you're taking portraits of. So what you're going to want to do is open up that aperture and have a small f-stop number, for example like 2.5 or 2.8. That way you have a shallow depth of field and only your friend is in focus. The opposite goes for a larger f-stop. Say you're taking landscape photography and you want a lot of detail in your shot, not just of the trees right in front of you. So you're going to crank that f-stop and you're going to get a wider depth of field, so that way you have more detail in your shot. Look at this photo, for example. It's just a normal shot of some leaves in a parking lot. Nothing too interesting. It had an aperture of 13, so it had a lot of detail in the foreground and background, noticed by the sign and the tree in front. Now if we take the same shot and open the aperture as wide as it can go, and for this lens it was 1.8, you're really going to narrow the depth of field and bring focus on just the leaves. But now that the aperture is open all the way, you really have to crank up your shutter speed. That way you can compensate for how much light is coming in. But combining the two, you get a shot like this instead. Burns is getting a little needy. Now it's important to know that not all lenses have the same capability. I'll definitely cover all of this in a different video, but I just want to make sure that you know that different lenses are going to give you different results. Last but definitely not least is ISO. ISO comes into play mainly in low light settings and can be thought of as fake light. ISO is basically the measurement of how sensitive your sensor is to light. The higher your ISO, the brighter your photo is going to be. However, the downside is that when you crank up that ISO, you're actually dropping your image quality as well. So when you increase that ISO and you get more light, you're going to get more noise or grain in your photo, and it's going to look really ugly, and it takes away from the quality of the photo. ISO really comes into play when you just need that extra bit of light. You've already set your shutter speed and you've already set your aperture, or you've already compensated as much as you can, but you just still need that bit of light and you can't get it anywhere else without an extra light or whatever it may be, even with an extra light. So that's when you crank up that ISO in order to really make sure that you get the shot, even if it means a little less quality. Most of the time an okay shot is definitely better than no shot at all. Okay friends, that's all for today. Make sure to get some practice in using all 3 with that camera of yours. You should be able to look at a photo and be like, I needed a wider aperture to really draw the attention on. My shutter speed's way too low, there's way too much motion blur, or I needed more light and it's looking terrible, I should have cranked my ISO. That way you can immediately look at it, you don't have to think about it, and you just take the next shot and it's right there and perfect, and you're just done and you save more time, the people are happy, you have the shot, and you're just being celebrated, just boom, bing, bam, it's just I don't know why I did that right now. Make sure you get enough practice in to master this before you move on to the next step. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up shortly by tapping the subscribe button and that bell, that way you're notified when I post new videos. It's been a pleasure, guys. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Peace. I'm just watching Bernie play with the pillow right now. Alright, he's done. So if you look at this eye right here, it goes from wide to narrow. Wide to narrow. Dark, bright. It's letting more light in, less light in. More light in because of the darkness, less light in because of the brightness.